part of what's called the white Western tradition, fine. We want it to be polyglot. We want it to be diverse. No problem with me. In fact, it's one of our advantages. As I say in the book, if you or I moved to India, we'd stand no chance of getting to the top of politics. If we went to China, same thing. In the West, people arrive in America, Britain. We have cabinets, we have shadow cabinets filled with a diverse range of people from a bewildering array of backgrounds, and it benefits us. So that's the second option. The third option, as you say, is the one that I've, of course, inevitably already come in for some criticism for and some misrepresentation. I'm very careful in what I say. What I say is white people and the West are inextricable. As, you might say, Hispanic peoples and the places they come from are inextricable. Black Africans and Africa, inextricable. Chinese and China. So, white people and the West is at least a Venn diagram that's got considerable crossover. So, if somebody says, what do you like about being white? You can take the view that Robin DiAngelo takes in her appalling book, White Fragility, and say there's no good form of being white and it's inescapable. That's what DiAngelo says. There's no good form of being white and it is inescapable.
Yeah.
You could say that. However, I suggest that there is also another option, which I'm very, very loath to say, but I say in the book, which is to say, okay, here are the things that these appalling dead white people created. And I'm just going to list them at you. And you'll see, as I show in that book, this is modernity. This is the civilized modern world. It's the culture which not only follows the scientific method and the democratic method, but the human rights method, for instance. These are not the norms historically. They're not even the norms today in the world. They're Western norms that were gifted to us primarily by dead white people. Now, does that mean they only belong to white people? No. But should we refuse to identify this fact? I don't see why. If everybody else is going to go down this route, we can say, look, we can all play that game. I'd rather not, but we could all play it.
So my response, and I think this is a fascinating thought experiment that you put forward, is I don't want to play that game. And I don't think you do either. And here's why.
I say that. I say that.
And here's why for me, Douglas. I am not a victim of white guilt. I feel no white shame.
Same here.
On the flip side of that coin, Douglas, I feel no white pride.
Absolutely.
I find nothing in my race that gives me any particular emotion one way or the other. And
Absolutely.
I would say
It's a
those
neutral
accomplishments.
thing.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And I would say those accomplishments that you point to rightfully as the products of Western civilization. And I know you agree with this, so I'm not debating you. I'm just talking this out with you. Those products of Western civilization are the product of ideas and not race. And they are ideas available to everyone. It is true, as you pointed out, the dead white men that did advance those ideas. And by the way, in I guess gratuitous form here, also some uniquely sinful ideas along the way. Actually, let me admit that. I'm not sure they were uniquely sinful. They were sinful, and they were sinful across the globe. But these assets, which, again, now to take this full circle, were embodied in the United States of America's founding, were unique. And that shouldn't be a marker of race. That should be a marker of culture. And I think we have a lot of trouble separating race from culture.
Yes, we have a lot of trouble because it's not entirely possible. I mean, that's just has to be said. As I say, I mean, can you separate out Chinese people from Chinese culture? You can, but it's not going to be a straightforward task. Can you separate out Japanese people from Japanese culture? You could, but it's pretty hard. It's the same thing with the West, and there's nothing inevitably bad about that. As you say, though, Will, question is it available for everybody? And the answer to that with the West is yes. There are people in America at the moment, very high up in the teaching unions, among other places, who think that, for instance, standardized testing is racist and they want to do away with it. They think, for instance, that math is racist and they want to do away with it. They claim that there are other ways of knowing. So there is, as it were, the Western mathematical method, and then there are other ways of knowing, which is said to be a sort of indigenous voodoo of some kind. It's very strange. They never say what the workings of this are or what it has produced. But my point is, the mathematical method is not. I mean, lots of people contributed to it, but it's not that it's been refined by white people. It's interesting. It's that it works. It works.
Right.
You couldn't build a bridge by other ways of knowing people using their other ways of knowing math and engineering.
Right.
People around the world use the Western method of engineering. They don't use a First Nations wisdom to build a large bridge.
And I would carry that further, by the way, Douglas. I would say understanding that a foundational value of modern civilization is a full embrace of free speech isn't interesting because it was put forth by white founding fathers. It's interesting because it works.
Yes, exactly. It's the same with a whole set of things. The Western democratic method, again, not normal at all. The Western system of notation in music, for instance, I mentioned at one stage in the book. It's not that it was white people that came up with it that makes it successful. It's that it works better than the other notation systems.
Right.
I don't see why. I mean, and here's the thing, by the way, Will. I mean, just to get back to this pride thing again, as you say, I would like to regard all this as morally neutral. So that if, in the same way, if somebody said, do you have a pride in being a man? I say, no, because I had no say in it. Any more than I have pride in being white, I had no say in it.
Right.
But if you say to me about your civilization, your culture, your nation, you can't feel any pride in it, well, in that case, you shouldn't feel any shame in it either. So
right.
You get to choose on this one. You don't get to say you have no right to access pride, but you should feel shame. Because this is a loaded game. This is like going into the casino, perhaps the First Nations casino, and being told that the game is rigged. This game is rigged.
I understand what you're saying. And the current temperature of the United States of America and the UK and the West is for the culture and I guess the race that extends from that Western civilization is made to face its shame, but told never to face any pride.
Yes, and it's so strange, isn't it, Will? It's so strange, Will, because there were times in the past we could say when, for instance, in Britain, the history of colonialism was taught in only one tone. Only a thing of pride. Look how much of the world we've dominated. Okay. I'm not a fan of that. But I'm certainly not a fan of saying the whole thing was just evil and the whole thing was negative and we should only be ashamed of it, any more than, again, saying the history of America. There have maybe been times in the past when people didn't know about certain aspects of this country's history, and it's worth bringing those things to the fore. Absolutely. I wouldn't want somebody who said everything we've done has always been good, we've never made any mistakes. Equally, somebody who says you've never done anything good. I'm not interested in that either.
I so much want to just participate in the race-neutral view of values and history, and I hear where you're pushing this. And so do an
increasing number of black writers and others in America, by the way. It's worth pointing out. The new generation of black American writers and others are exactly in line with you and me on this. They want it to be race-neutral. They don't like, indeed, they're very worried by.
Who are you talking about? A new generation of black writers? Who are you referencing?
I think people like Coleman Hughes, Thomas Chatterton Williams, not so new now, but Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter. They don't want any part in this evil pitting races against each other. They want a race-neutral environment as well, in which we all benefit from each other's learning and abilities and thoughts. So I'm quite positive that actually the future doesn't belong to the race hucksters and the race baiters, the Robin DiAngelos, who's obviously white herself, or the Ibram X. Kendis. I'm quite confident that there's enough people who want to go down the sort of race-neutral line, but there's a bit of pain in the short term.
And in a world where we can separate accomplishment and ideas from identity, that seems intuitive and easy to do. Identity beyond the individual identity, of course. I have no stake. I have no claim in anything anyone did before